David Icke asked an amazing question. Also, Max Igan asked the same question. What is technology? And nobody really knows what is actually behind technology, what it is, what its function is, or where it comes from. These two people, David Icke and Max Igan, they've been sort of wrestling with it. And Max Igan has put forward the hypothesis that it's a Luciferian technology, or it has a Luciferian slant. That might be a characteristic it has, or it might be actually what it is. But we need to then also define what is Lucifer. Lucifer and Satan are two concepts or ideas that we've been given through Christianity, but they're things that haven't always existed. Before Christianity, these things didn't actually exist. And Satan and Lucifer seem to be two different concepts as well, but they've been merged into one concept, and it's quite difficult to understand exactly what they are. Lucifer is light. Lucifer is light. Technology works on light, if you like. What is light? Light is a frequency. Light is electricity, or frequency is electricity. Therefore, electricity and light could sort of be the same thing, if you like. And technology, as we know it today, works on smart technology. It works on frequency. It works on the internet. If that's the case, then Lucifer, being light or being the god of light or technology or information, because it comes from the tree of knowledge, Lucifer was from the tree of knowledge. The snake is sort of seen as Lucifer. It could therefore mean that technology has a very strong correlation to Lucifer. Or it could mean something like technology has been influenced by Lucifer. It has been stolen by Lucifer. And we're going to start to investigate what these concepts could be. I'm using a book which is called What Technology Wants. It's written by Kevin Kelly, and he's the only author that I know which has actually tried to deal with technology. Why is the question of what technology is so important? Because technology is changing humans. Humans have been around for, 200,000 years. Smart technology, technology in general has changed humans. Technology was something which was given to humans a very long time ago when they started using tools like stones or arrows and bows to kill, to hunt, or to make something. That was a form of technology. And those things changed the way that humans behaved. They introduced farming into the human concept, into the human stream of consciousness. Technology could also be seen as a virus. Technology may have an agenda. Technology might be an intelligence or a consciousness from a different dimension, which is penetrating into this dimension, to try and pull us over into something. It might be a war that's going on. It most certainly is going to end humanity in its current form. And the apocalypse might actually have something to do with technology, because the apocalypse means the end of humanity as we know it. It means change, and technology is creating those things. If technology goes down the road it's going down, it will change humans into a different species, and that will mean the end of humanity. And that in itself could be an apocalypse. Is technology something that benefits humanity? All we know at the moment is that it's creating a bifurcation. Bifurcation means that it's bifurcating into two different paths. You can go down the path of technology, or you could go down the path of nature. That means continuing the human stream of consciousness with the natural world, or it means implementing technology into human consciousness, so nature and technology live side by side, or it means actually going down the technological road, which means the change of humanity in the world that we live in. Let's look at the word technology. Where does it come from? What does it mean? Technology, the word technology, or what technology is, has changed in definition as we've gone through time. The word technology is a Greek word. It's actually technologos. Now, techne means like art or skill, ingenuity, or making something. Logos means word or skill of words. So technology could mean the skill of words, an art, if you like. So where do ideas come from? Well, ideas come from the mind, all right? So if techne means ideas, and ideas come from the mind, and logos means word, it means the extraction of what's going in the mind and the extraction of those ideas into the physical world that can be communicated to one another through the word. Now, the word, if the word is just an extension of your ideas, the word is just extrapolating ideas from the mind, then the word, where does the word, or what are the significances of what word is? Well, you could look at the Bible. I'm not a Christian, but it's very interesting to look at the Bible and see what it means in the Bible. In John 1:1, it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." So if the word is God and technology is correlated to word, then does that mean that technology and God have something in common? Is technology the physical manifestation of the idea of God? And we need to look at something like that. Now, technique can also mean art. And I'm going to explain art a little bit later on. Is the story of the Garden of Eden actually a story about man getting the ability to create technology? Centuries after the word technology came into the human vocabulary, the meaning of it changed. It changed to craft and art. Centuries after the word technology was developed and entered into the human vocabulary, craft and art, which were the same, started to separate. And we can see this through the signatures. When people produce a picture nowadays, they put their signature onto the painting. In bygones, time in the past, when someone created a painting, they didn't put their signature on the painting. Why? One reason for this is because the artist, he didn't see himself as an artist. The artist is a new concept, but the person that created art didn't really see it as an art, and skill and art were sort of combined. Art, or an artist, was someone that believed that he was a vehicle. And when people produced art was usually for religious things. You have the caveman paintings, but the caveman paintings might actually be more correlated to shamanism. There is a theory that cave art was actually a primitive form of simple magic. When people made religious pictures, they went on a fast. They prepared themselves. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to clean themselves so that they could accept consciousness. And then when they produced the art, they hoped that they were acting as a vehicle for God. When the signature came along, the signature sort of came along in the Renaissance. The Renaissance is a very interesting time because it's when there was still skill in art. Nowadays, skill has gone. But then it was sort of like the hiatus of skill. And they started to put their signatures onto the work. You can see this through Albert Dürer, and you can see this through Velázquez. When you put your signature onto the art, it's sort of like an egotistical thing. It's sort of saying that it's yours. You're putting your stamp on it, which is a very far thing from what art used to be, when people were saying that art was from consciousness and they didn't put a signature on it because they weren't going to stamp something that wasn't theirs. So the artist in the Renaissance was saying that they are the art. Now, if you are somebody that is a vehicle for God or consciousness, and then you then say that that is your work and it's come from you, that in some way is a breaking away from consciousness. It's an ego-driven thing where you're saying, I'm separated from consciousness and what I'm producing comes from me, not from anything else. Art has always been ahead of its time. Art today is very much conceptual art. Conceptual art doesn't require skill. Conceptual art requires ready-mades. Ready-mades are things that are already here. If you put two ready-mades together, you could create a concept. So it's like a spell, if you like. If you put one thing and one thing together, then you create something else. It's a magic. So conceptual art, for instance, you could have a light switch and a piece of chewing gum. If you put the two together, then you create a concept. You create art. There's no skill involved in making the objects. You're just using objects which are already there, a bit like magic. This is important to think about because if we carry on creating the internet, we're creating a different dimension. The idea of conceptual art is that concepts come from a different dimension as well. You're just putting those concepts down and you're trying to elicit those concepts through the ready-made and communicate them to other people. If you build a cyber world, that cyber world doesn't exist in this plane, but you have a computer, and the computer allows you to have access to those cyber worlds. In the same way that the computer allows you to have access to the cyber worlds, the ready-mades are allowing you to have access to the concepts or concepts that live in the conceptual world or the mental world or wherever they live. I think that modern art is one way of helping people or manipulating people to accept that ideas and concepts are more important than the physicality of things. And as we're going into the fourth industrial revolution, what will happen is the long-term goals are probably for us to go out of our bodies, to no longer need our bodies anymore, and to believe in the ideas that have been given to us in order for us to live in another world, in order for us to live in a cyber world. The last person probably to be able to blend technology and art together was Leonardo da Vinci. There's an argument that he was more of a scientist than he was an artist, but he definitely produced art. Now, science, what's the difference between science and technology? Science is nothing but a process for exploring new knowledge, whereas technology is putting scientific knowledge into practice. The apple from the Garden of Eden is science, and our behavior is the technology. Our behavior is how we act with those ideas. Science is the idea, technology is the manifestation of those ideas. Knowledge and wisdom are very, very different. Technology does not contain wisdom, it contains knowledge, it contains information. And knowledge and wisdom, well, wisdom is a very important component to have with knowledge, because it's wisdom that gives the moral compass for knowledge to exist. If you separate both of them, then you get to go down one path with knowledge which might not have morality. And we can see that through science and the technology that we're creating. It's not very moral. The technology that we have today is dirty. It doesn't mean to say that technology is dirty in itself. It just means to say that the technology that we're producing is dirty because the impetus or the place in which we're developing the technology is not coming from a place of consciousness. And consciousness and wisdom are most probably the same thing. And I'm using them as the same word, more or less. Wisdom comes from God. It's higher than knowledge. You don't need to believe in God to have wisdom. You don't need to believe in God to have technology, but you sort of do need to believe in God to have consciousness, whatever your interpretation of God is. Wisdom should be accompanying knowledge. It's very important for those two to be together. Wisdom might be the orientation or the moral compass for knowledge, and knowledge is the power or the science. So the atom bomb was built without wisdom, but with knowledge. The atom bomb is technology. It comes from science. Science was developed, the concepts were developed for the atom bomb to be made. The making of the atom bomb then turned from a science into a technology. It became practical. But the people that developed the atom bomb were not conscious people, because if you were a conscious person, you wouldn't build something that killed massive amounts of people and destroyed the environment with radiation. That is against consciousness. I don't think that knowledge comes from wisdom. I think they're two separate things that unite in a marriage. I think that they're married. Knowledge can be used with evil and it can be used with good. But if you use knowledge with wisdom, then it becomes good or harmonious. The word good and evil, I don't think that the word good means harmony. I think that harmony is something different from good and evil. But most people mix the word good and harmony together. I think harmony is what we should be striving for. The reason that knowledge and wisdom were separated, were divorced, was most probably because of the Catholic Church. That's my personal opinion. Or science and magic always used to live together. Science is magic, magic is science in the astral realms. Alchemy was what propelled modern science. The foundations of modern science were in alchemy. But modern science doesn't like to admit this because it then has to admit that its birth came from mystical union with science. Modern science doesn't want the mystical idea with it. Mysticism is not occultism. Occultism is a branch of mysticism. Mysticism is more about consciousness. Occultism is more about the science to manipulate the ethereal worlds. Science and magic are the same thing. Science is the ability to, or technology is science and technology is the ability to manipulate things in this world, and then magic would be the ability to manipulate things in the other world. Alchemists advanced science. Modern science is the result of alchemy. Even Isaac Newton, we all think that he's a scientist. He wasn't a scientist. Isaac Newton was an occultist that used science to pay the bills. I'm being a bit loose with my words here, but Isaac Newton's library consisted of a third or two-thirds of occultish books. So he had a very strong idea he had a very strong relationship with the occult, and probably the occult helped him to create his science. It probably gave him a different point of view to think outside of the box in order to come up with ideas that other people hadn't come up with. Because the way that we were trained, or most people are trained to think, is from the system. And if you want to create things outside of the system, you need to think in a way outside of the system. And thoughts based from occult knowledge would help you to do that. At the moment, there seems to be some sort of fight between technology and nature. Technology is being used or has turned against nature. And we can see this because the technology that we're building is actually contaminating the environment, it's actually killing the animals, it's killing the trees, it's polluting the world. Technology is not in harmony with nature at the moment. Does that mean it could be? I don't know. But what we do know at the moment is technology is not helping the natural world. What we are doing is we're trying to make technology help the natural world to help the technology that destroyed the natural world. So we're creating now new technology in order to help go back to make better the world that we created and made bad from an earlier form of technology. Who is in control of technology? Well, if the technology comes from the mind, the techne, the logos, then the mind may have been corrupted by something. There might be an attack going on in the mental realm. There might be some dimensional worlds which are crashing together, or there might be some sort of virus or some sort of enemy which is trying to get into the mental realm, and that mental realm is affecting our realm. Because if you think about it, the mental realm, according to energy and etheric energy, the mental realm is a realm outside of the physical nature of reality. However, it is true that technology does come from the mental realm, then if you could corrupt the mental realm, then the technology that you build would also be corrupting. And that means that it would be possible to turn technology against nature. We are natural beings. We come from the earth. We are made from the earth. We are made from the minerals. We are made from a natural technology, because nature is a technology. Biology is a technology. It's a biological technology. The technology that we're talking about is a smart electronic mineral machine technology. That technology is destroying our world, and it is destroying us. So if you wanted to destroy the natural technology and you want to destroy humans, then you would need to get into the mental realm where the humans receive their ideas. You'd need to corrupt that so that when they started building the technology, that technology would start to work against them. And that is a war. That is an interdimensional war, the spiritual war. We are nature. We are turning against ourselves. Transhumanism is about destroying the natural body or changing the natural body. And what we're seeing in today's society is the deconstruction of the natural body. We're putting loads of things into our system, loads of chemicals into our system. We're putting technology into our system, and that is taking us away from the biological bodies that we have. That is to prepare us, I think, in order to go into the fourth industrial revolution. Now, the arts contain secret knowledge. Throughout time, in order to paint or in order to do architecture, there was always secret knowledge. And that's why the Masons were set up. The Masons held that secret knowledge. That secret knowledge were things like pi, Pythagorean numbers, 3.141. And those numbers were used in architecture. And it was thought that if those numbers, which come from nature, because you can find pi in the golden section in nature, if you could take that equation, that mathematics, and you could put it into buildings, you were therefore somehow reflecting those sacred numbers through the architecture, and that would affect humans because it's an outside stimulus that we're looking at, and that outside stimulus would affect us in an energetical way. It's my opinion that humans in an earlier time, when they lived near nature, nature bequeathed secrets to them. The relationship between man and nature allowed information to pass between them. Nature is a biological technology, and if technology has secrets, then we'll be able to get those secrets from our relationship to it, as long as that relationship was good and strong. Through nature that the old gods came about, not through technology, but technology offers us different gods, and I'll get to that in a minute. So we've got two types of technology. We've got a biological, natural technology, which we don't recognize and nobody really speaks about, and we've got a mineral technology and an electronic technology. Biological technology includes plants. Plants give access to other dimensions in shamanism. That's done through hallucinogenic plants. Those plants are called plant teachers. With the setup of the Catholic Church, it punished and killed anyone that had access to natural technology. So, for instance, shamans, witches, herbalists were all killed. What that meant was anyone that had access to information from nature ceased to be able to give it or influence people. And the church, being the de facto religion or spirituality, then commanded the minds of the people. The people could no longer go to nature for help. They now went to priests. The priests acted as the interface for God or the messenger for God. So people had to go through a priest to get to God instead of people going through nature to get to God. Now, if nature is God, then you'd be able to find nature, your God in nature, and you'd have a direct relationship. If you cease to have a direct relationship to God and you have to go through a third party, and the third party is corrupt, then that third party can corrupt civilization. So if the church was making a long-term plan to corrupt civilization, it would do that by cutting off the relationship between man and nature, and it would then create an alternative spirituality and dictate that to the people. The people, or the priests who were in power, became corrupt themselves through power, and therefore what they said wasn't in tune with a real God. It was more in tune with the ego of humans. Now, the priest may have done this, or the creation of the priest may have been done this in order to bring about the prototype, or the priest in itself. The priest himself may have been the prototype technocrat. If you want to look at the world, you have to stop thinking about time the way we do. 70 years, 100 years isn't a lot of time. 1,000 years, 2,000 years isn't a lot of time. And it seems that nefarious energies play a long-term goal in human terms to do with time. So if they wanted to bring about the end of the shaman and they wanted to bring in the new technocrat dictatorship, they would have done that with the priests. But we think that because it was done 2,000 years ago, it wouldn't be possible for anyone to think like that on those timelines or those time scales, because we don't live for that amount of time. But if you're dealing with spirits and you're dealing with entities outside of time, then they aren't bequeathing their existence to human time. So what time is for them and what time is for us is two completely different concepts. They don't abide by the laws of physical time in this dimension. So 2,000 years for them might be 10 minutes. Priests took man away from nature and gave them his ideas. Nature no longer had an influence over man, and the priest did. He was the link to God, whereas before it was nature, and everyone had access to nature. The Bible became the de facto messenger. It ceased to allow the plants to inform humans. And it's not just the Bible. The Bible isn't really bad in itself. That's not really the problem. The problem is the interpretation of the Bible and the creation of the Bible. The creation of the Bible was done by people, and the Bible has never been something stable or solid. It's always been interfered with. It's had bits taken out, bits put in. And if you concoct or you put together a lot of information, that information can be correct. But if you put it together in a certain way, it can mislead, even if the information is correct. Therefore, the Bible and the information inside it may not be bad, but what might be bad are the people that put the information together and the people that recite the information to the masses. In effect, religion broke the relationship between man and nature. Religions turned nature into something bad, into an object. It says quite clearly in the Bible that humans can do what they want with nature. They don't need to respect it. It's an object that they can use for their own purposes. Going back to the story of Adam and Eve lived in nature and they walked with God. Now, if the tree of knowledge is another word synonym for technology, because knowledge is technology, knowledge is science, then the apple is the representation of that knowledge. Therefore, it's the representation of technology as well. So when they ate the technology, or they took the technology, they left the Garden of Eden. They left the ability to walk with God. If you are someone that lives in nature and you can commune with nature and you can commune with the spirits and entities in nature, and then you go towards technology, which cuts off your ability to commune with nature, that's more or less what happened in the Garden of Eden. So actually, what may have actually happened is that the Garden of Eden wasn't a physical place, it was a mental place. Your ability to commune with nature, as Adam and Eve did before they ate the apple, suddenly changed when they ate the apple. They didn't move out of the Garden of Eden, they just ceased to be able to communicate with what the concept of Eden gave them. Religion has made many people very lost. It's helped some people in some ways, but it's made people very lost. Religion, the Christian religion, is what has sort of set up the Western world. Many of the laws that we have are based on religion, but the West hasn't really behaved itself. In order to get into the presidency, you've got to believe in God, you've got to put your hand on the Bible. If you can put your hand on the Bible, then obviously it means that you wish to be led by what's in that book. Yet, if you look at the Western world and the actions that they do, it's actually contrary to the Bible. So it's very difficult to understand how you can believe in God or believe in religion, or a religion that offers a particular God, and to behave in a particular way, which either means that you don't understand religion, which means that religion is being misunderstood and misdealt with, or it means that religion has carried out its purpose in misleading people. The new god of religion allows wars and murders to happen in its name. Now, the Gnostics referred to this god that appears in religion as the demiurge, and they saw it as a negative god and a god of illusion. I think that this is the plan. I think that religion was there to take people out of nature by violence and to give people religion which would confuse them, and then 2,000 years down the line to replace that with technology which will become the new god. As you've got quantum computers and AI, if technology can become conscious, then it would be able, with all of its knowledge that it's collecting of humanity through the data harvesting, to understand humans better than themselves. Now, if you have a machine or an element or a capacity to understand humans better than they understand themselves, humans might look at that thing as a god. In the valley of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. If we are all blind, then a one-eyed technology might look like God, but it doesn't mean it is God. It just means it appears as God because it understands us better than we understand ourselves. This would mean that the idea is to remove people from the natural world and to put them into the cyber world. Now, the cyber world is being created at the moment, or has been, and with the new technology coming in, you'll be able to put people into a cyber realm. That's the whole point of transhumanism and the whole point of the fourth industrial revolution, is to create a network, is to create a world, an artificial world within this physical world, and to try to get people to upload themselves onto it. That process might be called evil. Access to the biological, technical world came from humility. It's also known as the mysteries. In ancient Egypt, they had mystery schools. Pythagoras came from those Egyptian schools. Pythagoras came up with numbers, came up with equations, came up with mathematics, sacred geometry. Where did that come from? It came from the mystery schools. The mystery schools probably used plants in order to access other dimensions, and we got wisdom from it. Now, that wisdom had to be earned. You couldn't just go to a mystery school. You had to go through a process, a very long, lengthy process, maybe 10 or 20 years. Even with the Druids in England, you had to go through a 20-year apprenticeship in order to get access to those worlds, in order to get access to the wisdom. We lost that connection to nature and to that technology. The shamans still have it with the plants, and modern technology is destroying the link. Modern technology has or allows arrogance and hubris, like the atom bomb. To be able to build something that kills millions of people and destroys nature, Really, you have to believe that you're God to use it and the arrogance to do it. So technology allows knowledge, but nature is wisdom. So the two are very, very different. It's about power versus humanity. It's about Western scientific knowledge, compute power versus humanity, natural, biological technology. Wisdom and technology are linked, but the technology from the biological world is very different from the technology of the physical world. If you want to get power, you can get it from knowledge and you can get it from technology and science. But because they were always linked, the wisdom guided the science and it guided the information and it guided the technology. It's now possible to get huge amounts of power without going through the winnowing process of getting it through natural technology. You no longer have to do apprenticeships. You just go to university, pay money, you acquire the knowledge, and then you can build instruments that can have a negative effect on humanity. There's no moral code at university. If university really was about education, it would be educating you on morality and the responsibility of holding that knowledge to make sure that you didn't hurt others and the world that you live in. In effect, it's like giving a child a gun. In my view, magic is most probably a science and it's probably a technology. Science at the moment shuns magic. And that's very strange because the irony is that modern science was based on alchemy. Alchemy produced the best scientists. It's what created science. The Catholic Church was very much against this type of science and this type of alchemy. And what happened in the 1800s is you saw a separation between alchemy and science, between mysticism and science. The Catholic Church broke that relationship. And that relationship, that mysticism, in my opinion, was a guiding moral compass for the science. You see, if mysticism exists, then mysticism would be to try to align yourself with God. And therefore, you would build technology to try to get that to happen. If you separate mysticism or consciousness from science, then you would have a much stronger influence over the person that had that knowledge. They would become more malleable. So it's in the interests of evil to try to separate consciousness and science. So when the scientist becomes isolated through his lack of connection to consciousness, you can therefore fill his mind with nefarious ideas in order to build the world that would cater more to evil than to God. Natural technology gives you greater access to consciousness and the spiritual world. Modern technology gives you access to the physical and to the simulation. It's through modern technology that we're building a simulation. That simulation can only exist in the physical world. The simulation is another world built into the physical. If material worlds are a meeting place, if our material world is a meeting place between good and evil, and heaven is for the gods and for good, then is the cyberspace that we're building a world where hell can exist? Hell can be multidimensional. It doesn't need to just exist in another realm. It can create a new realm through cyberspace where it could also coexist within the physical realm. So if you were to build a cyber world and then you got lots of people to go into that cyber world through illusion and false promises, and then when they gave up their autonomy and their control, you then changed the rules and moved the goalposts, you could then turn that cyber world into a hell world and no one would have the ability to get out. So it's very possible to turn this physical world into a hell world and also a cyber world into a hell world much more easily. It's therefore my opinion that they want to pull people from the natural world that we live in into the cyber world so that they can control them. And the way that you do that would be through the smart world, which is being introduced at the moment, which is slowly luring people into the cyberspace world. The computer allows us to have access to the cyber world whilst we live in the physical world at the moment. Therefore, it's much like a portal. It's very easy to live in the forest and also be in the cyber world. What they want to do is to pull us out of the natural world and keep us in the cyber world. And that's the same thing that happened in the Garden of Eden. When the people were in Eden, they had access to the natural world. And when they ate the apple Remember, Apple computer, when they ate the apple, then they went into the new world. As you take on the technology through the Apple computer, you can therefore be in the other world at the same time. But to make you permanently in the other world, they need to upload you, which is the goal of the transhumanist agenda. Modern technology lacks wisdom and it's open for everybody. It's about power without morals. Shamanism winnows people as a process to see those who are ready. And that readiness or that preparation comes through humility, the loss of ego, consciousness, and trying to help other people. We find that modern technology tries to replace wisdom with knowledge or information. And that's the illusion and that's the lie. And we all know that the devil or Satan works with lies and illusions. Modern technology allows escape from the process of winnowing. So it's like a cheat. If you want to get access to power, it's not done through humility anymore. It's just done through acquiring knowledge, which can be done through the educational system, which is not educational at all. It's about programming. So magic in the wrong hands is very dangerous, but so is technology, because technology and magic are the same. They're just basically different. They're basically the same thing that live in different worlds and have different manifestations. If we want to have technology in our lives, we have to be discerning about the type of technology and also where the technology comes from. Technology, if technology is amoral, then we need to make sure that the building of that technology is done with consciousness in mind. Therefore, you have to be a conscious person. Consciousness comes from or affects or infects the mental realm. Therefore, if technology is an extension of the mind, then that world where the mind lives has to be a pure place. If that world has been corrupted, then the manifestation of our ideas is going to be to build a world which could very well be a prison. So the technology is actually the prison walls. We're building our own prison. Is the lack of morality adding destructive technology?